The soft clink of sterling silver against fine china echoed through the grand dining room as my mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, orchestrated the Thanksgiving seating arrangement like a five-star general. "Staff dine separately," she declared, her voice slicing through the chatter like a sharpened blade. She had just noticed me. "This family has standards to uphold." The words hit with the chill of ice water, but I kept my expression steady. 3 years into my marriage to Richard, and Margaret still treated me like the opportunist who had ensnared her beloved son. Around the polished mahogany table, the rest of the Whitmore clan carried on, willfully blind to the scene. Margaret gestured toward the kitchen with a perfectly manicured finger. "The help can eat back there," she added, already turning away as if I had vanished from existence. Just then, Richard stepped out from his father's study, arriving in time to catch his mother's condescension. His jaw clenched. "Mother," he said tightly, "Sophia is my wife." From the study came the booming voice of Richard's father. "Richard, Johnson's on the line about Singapore." Richard gave me a look full of regret before disappearing once again behind the study doors. With the Whitmores, business always came first. Always. I smoothed the fabric of my simple black dress, chosen carefully to avoid any accusations of flaunting wealth, and walked calmly into the kitchen. The catering staff looked up in surprise as I took a seat at the small breakfast bar. "You don't have to, ma'am," one of the servers began. "Apparently I do," I replied quietly, settling onto the uncomfortable stool. From the pass-through window, I could hear Margaret reshuffling the seating chart, ensuring her rigid hierarchy remained untouched. "Thomas, darling, tell everyone about your promotion at Goldman," Charlotte's voice rang out with exaggerated charm. Richard's sister never passed up a chance to parade her social clout. "And wasn't the Atoria Monte Carlo divine?" she continued. "Though I think the new owners have completely ruined it. New money, no sense of real luxury." I bit back a smile. I had acquired the Atoria last year. Charlotte's version of ruined referred to the end of complimentary suites for influencers who offered no meaningful returns. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Marcus, my CFO. "Dubai deal closed. Congrats, Sterling Holdings now owns the largest private real estate portfolio in the Northern Hemisphere." Before I could type a reply, the doorbell rang. From the kitchen doorway, I heard Richard's voice, followed by another that made my stomach tighten. "Alex." Richard sounded surprised. "I thought you were in Tokyo." "Flew back early," came the familiar voice of Alexander Murphy, Richard's business partner and one of the few who truly knew who I was. "Is Sophia here?" "I've got urgent documents that need her signature." Margaret's syrupy voice responded. "Oh, she's in the kitchen. You know how it is. Everyone must know their place." A pause. Footsteps. Then Alex appeared in the doorway, his expression hardening as he took in the scene, me sitting among the kitchen staff, excluded from my own family's table. "Why," he asked, his voice loud enough to reach the dining room, "is the woman who owns half of Manhattan sitting in the kitchen like she's part of the waitstaff?" Silence dropped like a curtain. A fork clinked against porcelain. "Owns half of Manhattan?" Margaret's voice had lost its icy edge. Alex strode into the dining room, and I followed, no longer willing to hide. He pulled out his phone and tapped to a headline on the screen. Financial Times, Sophia Sterling, CEO of Sterling Holdings, Brandenburg International, and 17 other global companies. He turned the screen toward the stunned guests. "She closed a $3.8 billion deal in Dubai this morning. It's front-page news." Thomas's water glass slipped from his hand, the crystal shattering against the hardwood floors I had personally chosen when I purchased the building 2 years ago. "That's not possible," Margaret whispered. "She's just a secretary from Queens." "A secretary?" I said at last, my voice composed. "When I met Richard, I was evaluating his firm for a potential acquisition. I've been building my company since I was 19, started with one neglected building in Queens, which I renovated and sold for profit." But you live in that tiny apartment," Charlotte stammered. "I own that building," I said calmly. "All 47 units. Just like I own this building, the one next door, and most of this block." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages from my executive team. Richard re-entered from the study, his face shifting through disbelief, awe, and something else. "The Sterling Foundation," I continued. "The anonymous donor who saved Thomas's firm last year?
That was me.
And the one who's been turning down Thomas's real estate offers?
Also me.
Sterling Holdings has plans for this block, something more meaningful than another sterile luxury tower. Margaret looked pale, her polished mask beginning to crumble.
All these years, she murmured. Why didn't you ever say anything?
Because you made up your mind the moment you heard I was from Queens.
You assumed I couldn't possibly be good enough for this family. I met their eyes, one by one.
So I let you believe whatever made you comfortable, while I built an empire that makes your so-called old money look quaint. Margaret blinked, her voice barely audible. The crystal set last Christmas, the one I couldn't trace. A gift, I confirmed, through one of my shell companies. Just like the anonymous donation that funded the new wing at your country club. I've been supporting this family from the shadows for years, even while you treated me like I didn't belong. William, Richard's father, finally spoke.
You've been deceiving us.
No, I corrected. You deceived yourselves. There's a difference. Every time you made a snide remark about my background, insisted that servants eat separately, or introduced me as Richard's little wife from Queens, you revealed exactly who you are. Alex stepped forward, holding a folder. The Tokyo contracts, Sophia. We need your signature before the markets close, or we'll lose the Yamamoto acquisition.
I skimmed the documents.
Another multi-billion-dollar deal, this one adding even more weight to my expanding portfolio in Asia. Around me, the Whitmore family sat frozen, unable to reconcile the woman flipping through legal jargon worth more than their combined net worth with the one they had just banished to the kitchen. Thomas finally spoke, his voice hushed with dawning realization.
Your SS.
The mysterious name behind all the Manhattan redevelopment, the skyscrapers, the landmark acquisitions.
That's you.
Guilty as charged, I said, signing the final page with swift precision. Richard stepped toward me, regret heavy in his eyes.
Sophia,
You knew, I interrupted, softly but firmly. Maybe not the whole story, but you knew I wasn't what your family believed me to be.
And still, you let them treat me like this.
His shoulders sagged.
I was afraid. I thought staying silent would keep the peace.
The Sterling Scholarship Foundation, Charlotte said weakly.
We've been attending the galas every year.
She looked stunned. We've been sending donations. To you? To kids from Queens who deserve the same chances I got, I said, eyes locked on hers. Your family suddenly becomes very generous when the press is around. I handed the contracts to Alex, who gave a single approving nod.
That's everything.
It's a misunderstanding, Margaret said suddenly, her tone much softer now. Surely we can sit down and talk through this.
A misunderstanding?
I laughed, not kindly. You made me eat in the kitchen on Thanksgiving Day.
That's not confusion, Margaret. That's contempt.
My phone began to ring, probably the mayor's office, calling about the affordable housing development I was funding.
I let it go to voicemail. You know what's funny?
I asked, slipping into the coat I'd stashed in the kitchen, not the wool blend I'd worn as part of the disguise, but the tailored cashmere one that cost more than Charlotte's car.
I fell in love with Richard when I had nothing.
Just ambition and a cramped studio apartment. I would have been happy with a middle-class life if it meant being with him. But your prejudice ran so deep, you couldn't see the woman who genuinely loved your son standing right in front of you.
Please, William said, the panic seeping into his voice now.
The Whitmore Foundation has been trying to partner with Sterling Holdings for years.
If we had known, you'd have treated me like a human being? I finished for him. How generous. I met his eyes coldly. But I only do business with people who value people. Not just their money.
Richard moved to my side.
I'm coming with you.
Margaret grabbed his arm, her voice rising.
Don't be ridiculous, Richard. Think of your family. I am, he replied, peeling her fingers away.
I'm thinking of my wife, the woman I let down over and over again.
He turned to me.
I don't deserve it, Sophia. But if there's a way to earn your forgiveness, I'll spend the rest of my life trying. I searched his face. For the first time in 3 years, I saw genuine remorse.
You get one chance, Richard, I said quietly. Don't waste it.
The cars are ready, Alex announced, glancing out the window at the sleek line of vehicles my security team had prepped, just in case. As we walked toward the exit, I paused and looked back.
Oh, and Margaret? I called out. The catering staff you made me sit with? They'll be getting quite a bonus this year.
Enough to give them a choice, whether they ever want to serve people like you again.
You can't just walk out,
Charlotte protested.
It's Thanksgiving.
You're right, I said, pulling out my phone. That's exactly why I'm going to have a real Thanksgiving, with people who see me as a person, not as someone beneath them.
I dialed Marcus. Call Lou Bernardine.
I want the private dining room ready in 20 minutes. And send cars for the catering team at the Whitmore residence.
They're joining us for dinner.
As we stepped outside, I heard Thomas whisper to his father. Do you think she'd reconsider our real estate proposal now?
The desperation in his voice was almost laughable.
Almost. Manhattan shimmered under a sky of glittering lights.
My buildings, my streets, my skyline.
The empire I built while smiling politely and serving hors d'oeuvres to people who believed I belonged in the background. For what it's worth, Richard said, sliding into the car beside me. I love you.
Not your fortune. Not your company. Just you. Then show me, I replied simply.
My phone buzzed again. Forbes wanted an exclusive on the Dubai acquisition. The Wall Street Journal was running a profile. Success was no longer a secret. As our convoy pulled away from the Whitmore residence, I glanced back. The family stood at the window, stunned and small, watching their illusion of superiority collapse one luxury town car at a time. Margaret was probably already scheming how to salvage her social standing.
Ma'am, my driver said.
Lou Bernardine confirms your reservation. They're asking, do you want the traditional Thanksgiving menu or your regular order?
Both, I said. And tell them we have guests tonight.
People who showed more kindness in one evening than my in-laws did in 3 years.
Richard took my hand gently.
I'll spend the rest of my life making it right.
Words are cheap, Richard, I replied, eyes on the skyline. Even from a Whitmore.
I opened a new file on my phone, a contract for the acquisition of a European hotel chain.
Another opportunity. Another step forward.
Because empires aren't built on revenge. They're built on relentless purpose and the quiet satisfaction of proving every single person wrong.
As the city raced past, I thought of that girl from Queens, armed with little more than grit and vision. Every dismissive glance, every servants eat separately, every insult had only made me more determined.
The Whitmores thought they were putting me in my place. Instead, they created a queen who now owned the land beneath their designer shoes. My phone pinged again, another lead, another deal. I smiled and forwarded it to my team. And tonight, while Margaret Whitmore tried to salvage the ruins of her perfect Thanksgiving, I'd be dining at the best table in Manhattan.
My table. My rules. My empire. No more kitchens. No more silence. Only legacy.